U.S. suicides reach highest number ever, according to new government data. About 49,500 people took their own lives last year in the U.S. The highest number ever, according to new government data posted Thursday. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which posted the numbers, has not yet calculated a suicide rate for the year, but available data suggests suicides are more common in the U.S. than at any time since the dawn of World War II. There's something wrong. The number should not be going up, said Christina Wilbur, a 45-year-old Florida woman whose son shot himself to death last year. My son should not have died, she said. I know it's complicated. I really do. But we have to be able to do something. Something that we're not doing. Because whatever we're doing right now is not helping. Experts caution that suicide is complicated, and that recent increases might be driven by a range of factors, including higher rates of depression and limited availability of mental health services. But a main driver is the growing availability of guns, said Jill Harkavy-Friedman, Senior Vice President of Research at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Suicide attempts involving guns end in death far more often than those with other means. And gun sales have boomed, placing firearms in more and more homes. A recent Johns Hopkins University analysis used preliminary 2022 data to calculate that the nation's overall gun suicide rate rose last year to an all-time high. For the first time, the gun suicide rate among black teens surpassed the rate among white teens. The researchers found, I don't know if you can talk about suicide without talking about firearms, Harkavy-Friedman said. U.S. suicides steadily rose from the early 2000s until 2018, when the national rate hit its highest level since 1941. That year saw about 48,300 suicide deaths, or 14.2 for every 100,000 Americans. The rate fell slightly in 2019. It dropped again in 2020, during the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic. Some experts tied that to a phenomenon seen in the early stages of wars and natural disasters, when people pull together and support each other. But in 2021, suicides rose 4%. Last year, according to the new data, the number jumped by more than 1,000 to 49,449, about a 3% increase versus the year before. The provisional data comes from U.S. death certificates and is considered almost complete, but it may change slightly as death information is reviewed in the months ahead. The largest increases were seen in older adults. Deaths rose nearly 7% in people ages 45 to 64, and more than 8% in people 65 and older. White men, in particular, have very high rates, the CDC said. Many middle-aged and elderly people experience problems like losing a job or losing a spouse, and it's important to reduce stigma and other obstacles to them getting assistance, said Dr. Deborah Horry, the CDC's chief medical officer. Suicides in adults ages 25 to 44 grew about 1%. The new data indicates that suicide became the second leading cause of death in that age group in 2022, up from No. 4 in 2021. Despite the grim statistics, some say there is reason for optimism. A national crisis line launched a year ago, meaning anyone in the U.S. can dial 988 to reach mental health specialists. The CDC is expanding a suicide program to fund more prevention work in different communities. And there's growing awareness of the issue and that it's okay to ask for help, health officials say. Christina Wilbur lost her 21-year-old son, Cale, on June 16 last year. He died in her home in Land O'Lakes, Florida. Cale Wilbur had lost 2 friends and an uncle to suicide and had been dealing with depression. On that horrible morning, He and his mother were having an argument. She had confronted him about his drug use. His mother said she left his bedroom and when she returned he had a gun. I was begging him not to. And to calm down, she said. It looked like he relaxed for a second. But then he killed himself. She describes her life since as black hole of emptiness and sorrow, and had found it hard to talk to friends or even family about Kale. There's just this huge 6'2" hole everywhere, she said. Everything reminds me of what's missing. It's hard to find professionals to help, and those that are around can be expensive, she said. She turned to support groups, including an organization called Alliance of Hope for Suicide Loss Survivors that operates a 24/7 online forum. https apnews.com/article/suicidus record 2022 guns 48511D74 Deb 24D933E66 Sec 1B6F2D545 Tade equals 64D5647 D99E3C9000016 As someone who has a history of depression, the number one cause of thoughts of suicide as an adult has been financial issues, and it isn't even close. I'm a lot more stable now and the thoughts are much rarer, but money would literally solve all of my problems. It's not even like I actively want to die. I haven't been that bad since high school dealing with a bad home life. It's just that it feels like the only way to escape this hell. Suicide rates have increased because of wage slavery in return for a low-quality life. Our government has abandoned our interests in favor of corporate America, and will not improve our material conditions. Suicide is the new 401k. Since that shot won't even be enough to survive on cat food for most, bullish for the economy. Though ain't hat right, Goldman? Until people are compensated properly for their work and the cost of living goes back to being reasonable, these suicide rates are going to continue to climb higher and higher. If I didn't have a child that needs me, I probably would have offed myself 4 or 5 years ago. People are broke, depressed, economic crisis every few years that just increases the wealth gap, wages not keeping up with cost of living, college being pointless and a debt burden for most. People feel lost due to lack of job security and nothing improving for the working class the past 20 years. So suicide is rising because what's the point in busting my ass 40+ hours per week and not even be able to afford a home and be stuck living paycheck to paycheck? I would like to see global stats. I am very sure people world over are fed up with the dumpster fire that is the world nowadays. It's the economy. It's the lack of help for people trying to get disability. It's the lack of affordable mental health services. It's being unable to afford medications. It's all of the above, and it's only going to get worse if everything stays this expensive. They need to stop trying to divert this to an argument about gun rights. These poor people would do this with or without guns. I have dealt with major depressive disorder for the majority of my life. The happiest I have ever been is working from home. I feel my mental health would fall apart if I had to go back to the office. People might think it's funny or I'm joking when I say that. But I'm really not. Work-life balance is so important. If I ended up separated from my fiancé, I wouldn't be able to live on my own, and I have no family. So I have two options. 1. Stay with fiancé forever, regardless of how we get along. 2. Leave fiancé for roommates. I have no family alive that I can turn to. My dad passed away and my mom and sister are in active addiction. I'm 5 years in recovery for opiates. Did I mention I'm only 25? I'm sure you get the picture. Grew up in poverty, abuse, drug addiction, etc. We can't even support ourselves as a single person anymore. And people wonder why suicide rates are going up. Us 25-44s didn't have the growth potential of the older demographics. The mortality rate for infants and children has been raised to 10.7% recently according to some sources. This is by far the most alarming statistic I have seen lately. The suicide rate and rate of chronic drug addiction are the other two which are also continuing to increase at alarming rates. Love me some good old-fashioned manufactured consent! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Imagine trying to blame this on gun access instead of asking why someone is looking for a way to off themselves in the first place. Pathetic behaviors by the rich and powerful as usual. For the people claiming the lack of government-funded mental health is a non-factor. In 1980, the USA had 50,000 beds available for mental health. The Reagan-Bush administration made a deal with the moral majority to cut government funding and hospitals all over US started closing. My uncle told me how his county lost their local hospital and all the jobs that went with it. He said the politicians said we are going to save you money on your taxes. That's what tax cuts get you. Nowhere to go in a crisis. Yeah, it's not availability of guns or access to mental health. It's capitalism. A system based entirely on profit and growth will never lead to a healthy society that is cooperative and provides for all. Blaming it on anything else is a tool to keep everyone divided. Blaming it on guns or mental health makes it a right-left issue when it's not about right or left. It's about living in a society where everyone contributes. People are cooperative, and hard work is rewarded. My husband is a psychiatric RN. The acute psychiatric hospital he's working at is developing a wing for children because adolescent suicide is so prevalent these days. I don't feel like offing myself. Not yet anyway. But I have given quite a bit of thought about the possibility of having children and almost everything points to nope. Gotta love how they try to spin it into a gun control argument. They're so afraid of the people fighting back that it's not even funny anymore. Zero sympathy for the situation that corporate America has put all of its citizens in. Just straight to, we should disarm them before they do something. Rent is $2,000 and a cheeseburger is $10, so yeah, people are eating bullets. But a main driver is the growing availability of guns, said Jill Harkavy-Friedman, Senior Vice President of Research at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. During the latter part of the 19th century, suicide was also a big problem in London. Guns were not readily available then, so the main form of suicide was drowning. The problem was so great that city officials actually planned to cover the entire Thames River with a net. The plan proved too expensive to implement. Now that guns are the low-hanging fruit, what's the plan? Let's face it, it's not just about suicide awareness. It's about providing support services, options for help, mental health support that is free, community support, and work requirements that help those struggling to cope without consequences or be fired. Longer vacations and days to recoup, shorter work weeks or hybrid schedules, and ways to allow people to get help without fear of going broke. Most people can't even afford sliding scale therapy. We need actual tangible help, not awareness or buzzwords. Those mean nothing.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.